Evan Daniels and Dr. Lewis. What better way to honor Dr. King's legacy than to celebrate and highlight our leaders and advocates here in Louisiana? So I'm excited to introduce our next speaker, Mr. Howard White. A little bit about him. Howard White is a business owner, husband, father, volunteer, and a proud mechanical engineering graduate of Southern University. While attending Southern, Howard was a SGA president, a member of the Southern Board of Supervisors and Phi Alpha fraternity. After working for Fortune 500 companies, Howard pursued his passion for teaching and training by starting Business Growth Dynamics Consulting, a leadership and sales consulting company. As a John Maxwell trained speaker and coach, Howard has had the opportunity to train, speak, and coach business leaders and businesses throughout the US and overseas. Howard enjoys strengthening his community by volunteering at his church, Big Buddy, 100 Black Men, and actively serving nonprofit boards. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Mr. Howard White and the 4 Ps of a king-size dream. Take it away, Howard.
All right. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. If you guys could put in the chat or somebody give me a thumb up that you can hear me, because I've gone through a presentation once and guess what? Halfway through, I got a phone call that, hey, I didn't hear you, Howard. So it's sounds on. Okay, great. So now I just want to say good evening and, or I'm sorry, good afternoon, because most of us are in Central Time. You know, as we think about where we've been today and the reason we are here together, I mean, Dr. Laban laid a strong foundation and you know, Mr. Evan gave us a way we could communicate that message. And Ms. Lewis, you know, talked about what I got from it. Now, you may have got something a little different, and I'm okay with that, is that we got to care. We got to care. We got to care about our students. We got to care about that next generation. Because it's been said that no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And so, you know, just excited about being here. You know, normally at an event like this, guess what? We'll get a chance to, you know, hug each other, at least high five or get to meet each other. So to help me out a little bit, I want to know a little bit about who you are and where you're from. If you're not with the Red Cross, just simply put in the name of the organization in the chat and what city you coming in from. If you're with the Red Cross, just say Red Cross, and then let me know what city. Because, you know, I just like to know who's in the audience that I'm talking to and sharing with, because that helps me. You know, this virtual world has been totally different for all of us, and it's some ways great, and other ways not so great. But either way, you know, we have to make the best of it. So I see we have Chicago, we have the North Shore, we have New Orleans, and so let's see, where else? Lafayette, Asheville, North Carolina. Hey, Miss Megan, from up in beautiful country up there in the hills. And so as we begin to think about it, I wanted to share something today. And, you know, it was last week. I'm kind of the second string guy, actually third string. I'm a member of 100 Black Men, and our executive director called and said, well, Howard, I won't be able to make it. And Michael Adams, who's our president, he won't be able to make it. Would you be willing to do this for the 100? I said, of course. But I was honored. I was excited. But then I was talking to the team with the Red Cross, and they asked, what are you going to share? I had not thought about that when I made the call. And what God laid on my heart was the 4 Ps of a king-size dream. So, you know, today I really want to share with you, whether you're in Charlotte, Asheville, Lafayette, Covington, Chicago, Houston, Texas, you know, no matter where you're at, or Alexandria, Virginia, I want to challenge you to think about connecting to these 4 Ps and asking yourself, what is my king-size dream? What is my king-size dream? You know, if I could go back to Prentice, Mississippi, where I grew up at in a Baptist church, I would probably say, open your Bibles up to the 37th chapter of Genesis. We want to talk about a young man named Joseph. You know, Joseph was a dreamer. Well, if you fast forward to the 50s and the 60s, we know of another dreamer by the name of Dr. Martin Luther King. And so as you think about dreamers, they create things. They create things. And see, if I look at my engineering roots, guess what? I would think about great inventors. I heard one of the speakers before talked about, I think it was Dr. Lewis, talked about, Steve Jobs, how he created in his mind first, well before we saw the first iPhone, well before. And so, I challenge you today as you connect in and begin to think about what is that king-size dream that you're living within the organization, that king-size dream that you're living for yourself. And so today I hope to help you walk away a little bit and think about how can I inspire? How can I be the next George Washington Carver? How can I be the next Steve Jobs? How can I create and move forward this organization that I'm serving? Because the Red Cross, yes, has a team, a staff, but it requires a lot from volunteers. And part of dreaming sometimes is how do you serve? And we're going to talk a little bit about that as we really get into the 4 Ps. One of the things about a king-size dream, it is big. That's right, it is big. And I like what Oprah Winfrey says. She said the biggest adventure you can take is to live the life of your dreams. Who better to give that advice? Who better to give that advice than Oprah Winfrey? And so as you talk about a king-size dream, I want to give you that first P. I promise you 4 Ps. We won't be with you long. I know Dr. Laban said earlier he'll be through before lunchtime, before dinner. That's what he said. And he was finished way before dinner. And I guess I'll be a little bit like that, but not quite as long. And so the first P is purpose. We all know that Dr. King had to have walked in his purpose. And if you could just help me out, if you could summarize your purpose in one sentence, what would it be? And if you're comfortable with sharing, put it in the chat. I want you to put it in the chat if you're comfortable with sharing. And I'm okay if you're not, but if you would, let's just help others to see who they're connected with on this afternoon. But when I think about my purpose, is really my name, helping others win and realize dreams. Helping others win and realize dollars. That's what I do. And it's an acronym for me. And that's one of the things you're going to learn about me. I'm an acronym junkie. I grew up in the country, so you had those sayings and acronyms that help you learn things. And so I see making a positive impact, preparing others. And so it's going to be a variety of statements. And that's because your purpose is your purpose. But I would have to think, and let's think about Dr. King. He was a young student at Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia. So he started out early, finished early, and then he went ahead and got a PhD from Boston University. And so he didn't do like Howard White did. He didn't take that 5-year college plan. He finished at a young age. But one of the things that I think about is I really think about he had to be praying this prayer because he said this quote, "Use me, God, show me how to take who I am, who I want to be, and what I can do, and use it for a purpose greater than myself." A purpose greater than myself. And so as you think about that, as I see and look in the chat of great things coming in of great purpose. And that's one thing about a service organization. You have to have a heart for service, but you have to be truly, truly on purpose. And so as I think about Dr. King and him walking on purpose, he wasn't truly on purpose. He was more have chosen a career. You remember his dad was a pastor. And so could this have been a career? But I believe in that December day, that's right, December the 5th, in 1955, if I'm, correct there, when this lady who had been working all day, and I don't believe she was trying to make a statement, but she was just tired. She was sitting on a seat, and if you ever been tired and somebody asked you to do something you didn't want to do, or you just didn't feel like doing, sometimes you met it with resistance. And so, Miss Rosa Parks probably was sitting there, and when this gentleman asked her to give up her seat and she chose not to, and she went to jail because, during those times, in case you don't know, it was illegal for a Black person to sit at the front of the bus when a white person wanted to have a seat, regardless who got there first. But we're not going to talk about that right now, but we're going to talk about that phone call Dr. King had to have gotten. See, he was a pastor at a church in Montgomery, Alabama, but that call that he answered actually took him into his purpose. See, taking and answering that call is what really happens when is really what brings the purpose out in you. So, I challenge you and ask yourself, and you don't have to put this in the chat, but ask yourself, have I answered that call? Am I working on a calling? And so when you think about it, your purpose calls you. Also, when you think about it, your purpose causes you pain. So if you think about Dr. King and the pain that he went through, as a person that serves in the Red Cross, you don't go through that type of pain, but there are a lot of things that you do that you're not compensated for. There are a lot of struggles and challenges you make because your mission versus what companies for profit would do is you give away what you raise. And so there are pains that happen. So if you think about Dr. King and him walking on purpose, it caused him to endure those beatings, those false accusations. I mean, he was in prison and probably forms of abuse that we have no idea of. And so if you think about that, but it actually prepares you for more. So when you have answered that calling, when you're what I like to call in purpose and on purpose, guess what? That is when you're growing. That is when you're able to serve more. I think about the first time that I realized that it called me. And, I go back to, what I'm doing right now, speaking and sharing with you the first time that I spoke outside of church. Because see, if you grew up in a Baptist church, there were about 4 or 5 times a year that you had to be on program. Okay. I mean, that's just the way it was. And the first time that I shared outside was at Jackson State University. And I can remember before I got on stage, the lady knocked, I was in the 10th grade, and I believe one of my cousins is on today, and she may remember this. We were at this program called Summer Science Program, but for some reason they chose me to speak as a 10th grader, and we had 11 and 12th graders in the program. But I remember this lady knocked her glass of water over my lap, and literally, my pants was wet. But, I got through that. And so as I drew on that, anytime I get up to speak, I think about how it cannot be any worse than that. But then as I move forward, I think about my mom having a conversation with me my first senior year in college. Even though I'm an engineering student, she said, "Son, you should be a teacher." And that's what I do in my business. That's what I do in our retail store. I love working with students and teaching and sharing with students from Southern mainly. And so ask yourself, what is your purpose preparing you for? If you would put in the chat, just think about that. The things that you've gone through, what are you prepared to do in the next season? Just one word. What are you prepared to do? For me, it's community. We're working on a virtual community in this space. We had time to sit still because there was no football season. So it's preparing me to build this community. It has prepared me to build this community. And then last but not least is your purpose is for serving others. So when you think about it, when you're truly walking on purpose, you're serving and helping others. And it's been said that, if a person has not discovered something that they will die for, then he isn't fit to live. And I truly believe that service that we know within us. So I promise you 4 P's, and so we're going to go ahead and get through them quickly and open it up for questions, because I love working through and talking with people. So I love engaging. So we're going to leave some time for questions if there be any. So now, as you think about it, the next P is people. The next P is people. And so in order to have a king-size dream, you got to have a dream team. Now, I'm not talking about that basketball team of Michael Jordan and those other guys. I'm talking about a collective of people that you need. And so when you think about doing good things, you can do good things by yourself. But in order to do great things, you got to have the right people around you. So when you look at the Red Cross, think about what it takes to respond to a disaster. Think about what it takes to help a family on an apartment complex that has just been burnt out. What does it take to provide those services? It takes a true team. So let's just talk about three components of a team, or three types of teams that you need. See, I had the pleasure of hearing Ambassador Young, Mayor Young, if you in Atlanta. You know, he's from New Orleans. And so literally he was talking about working with Dr. King and the team that they had in place and how everyone had a role. And so you have to think about that, you know, when you have that team. And so, you know, I at first, you know, as I started thinking about this, first it has to be the family, because it all starts at home. Your family has to truly have bought into the dream. You know, I had a chance, you know, my bio, it talked about I was student government president. So one of the persons we had in was Martin Luther King III. And I remember having lunch with him at the governor's mansion when I was in school, and we were sitting there. And the question came up. I don't know who asked the question, but he said, what was it like to be with your dad? And what he brought up was, he said, I was always excited when my dad came home because he had great stories to tell. But then when you think about this little child remembering the great stories, his wife had to remember being alone and being supportive in the dream. See, that's what your family does for you. You know, when you're away volunteering, when you're away sharing, when you're away serving others, they don't complain. They consider that's part of their service. And you got to have your family on board. And then next is that inner circle. We got to have a inner circle. Even though that inner circle is not large, it is critical. Those individuals that get in the trenches with you, those individuals that have your blind side, those individuals that when you have to go and respond to a disaster, they're taking care of things back at the office. And see, that's a key part of your team. So if you have not done that on this day of service, think your inner circle. Just send them a text. Hey, I love you for what you do. And then maybe put one thing in there. So, you know, if you would just pick that up and do that now and let them know that. And so as you begin to move forward, the last one really is, as someone put in there, those amazing volunteers. And see, for Dr. King, it was those believers and that congregation, those individuals willing to follow you and buy into your dream. See, these are the people that go out and multiply your dream. See, I don't care what you do in your office as the commander, as the top person, as the president of an organization. If you don't have a team of believers that's willing to multiply it, you won't get great things done. So I challenge you to think about those three things and ask yourself, do I have those three people in my dream team? Now, the next P, see, we got purpose, we got people. Let's talk about planning. You know, one of the things as I was preparing, I had a chance to go through several Dr. King speeches and listen, but it was a quote that resonated from me from a book, 1963, The Strength of Love, The Strength to Love, excuse me. And that quote is, no work is insignificant. All labor that uplifts humanity has dignity and importance and should be undertaken with painstaking excellence, with painstaking excellence. And so think about that in what we do and how we serve. And then when I started thinking about it from a planning standpoint, I ran across this speech that very few people have heard. It's called The Blueprint of Life. And what Dr. King was in Philadelphia for a rally, on an evening rally, but during the day, he stopped by this school and he asked the students, what is your blueprint for life? You know, a lot like Dr. Lewis talked about earlier, at 10th grade, that blueprint would have been different. However, you still need to be thinking about that. So I challenge you, whether you're listening in as that 10th grader, that 30-year-old, 40-year-old, 50-year-old, 60-year-old, what will be the blueprint for the rest of your life? You know, what are those plans that you have on your heart that's going to cause you to live on purpose? And so now you will begin to build those plans. So I'll go back to one of our favorite books, one of my favorite books, the Bible, and talk about, you know, from the 11th chapter of Hebrews. It talks about faith. You know, faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. However, I have to believe this. And as you get to know me, you'll realize that I like the high-evers, and the rest of the story, as Paul Harvey used to say, is a plan put legs to faith. So when you have a plan, it tells others that you have faith. See, faith is between you and God, but the plan is for your team. The plan is to show the world that you're walking on purpose, in purpose. You know, I'm here in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and there's a gorgeous Red Cross building that's here. And I have to believe that when that was conceived, and the people of Kuwait was willing to invest in that building, when they saw the plans, when the local teams on the ground saw the visual, the blueprint, wow, they was like, this is going to happen. And that's the way we are with our dreams. And see, a lot of people don't see the dream until it's on paper. A lot of people don't see the dream until you make it clear. So I want to give you three W's. That's just 3 quick W's, and we won't go through them, but I want to share them with you in developing a plan. You should always know why. Okay, and why stands for what helps you. So I told you I'm a acronym junkie, and why stands for what helps you. If someone would put that in the chat, the 3 W's of planning, what helps you. And so, you know, I have to believe that when Dr. King was getting hauled off to jail in Birmingham and all the other cities, he really had to think about, why am I doing this? I could be at home playing with my kids. And you know, when he was planning the March on Washington, all the work that had to go into it, and the threat on his life at the time, if you remember the picture, all the gentlemen in white was the fruit of Islam, because he didn't know who to trust, and you know, the Muslims said, hey, we will protect you because we believe in your cause. See, you don't have to agree with everything someone's doing to share in a common cause. The second one, W, is who. We have others. And so when you think about it, you can't do it by yourself. You shouldn't do it by yourself, and don't try to do it by yourself. Okay? You can't, you shouldn't, and don't try. And so as you're developing a plan, you ask who. If someone would put that in the chat for me, who. We have others. So think about the others that will help you live this king-size dream. And then the third one is what? Hey, what do I have to do? And that simply means we have action to take. That's right. We have action to take. And so when you think about that, that gives you a great plan. If you go in and tell your team, hey, you know, tomorrow, hey, this is why we're doing what we're doing. Here's who's going to help. And here's what we have to get done. You got a plan. It's that simple, but it's that hard, because oftentimes we don't want to take time to plan. And when you think about it from this standpoint, you know, and this is kind of like preaching to the choir, I guess. Never preached, so I can't fully say that. But just think about this quote from the same book in 1963, The Strength to Love. If I cannot do great things, I can do small things in a great way. That's from Dr. King. And so when he talks about that, it's just simply that small plan in a great way. So I challenge you to think about it from that standpoint and move forward. And then the last one is perspective, commonly known as vision. So it's all about having that fresh dream, having that fresh look on how we should do things. And so I challenge you to look to the future of your organization, your life, and ask yourself, what's next for us? Where will I be? And so when I look back and, the most common speech, or I'm sorry, the most well-known speech that everyone knows is with Dr. King is, I have a dream. And really what it was talking about was what he was seeing. He was sharing with you. He was leading with his heart. He was leading with his heart. And I have to believe that he had to continuously do that. And see what vision does and what perspective does, that fresh perspective, it takes you beyond your eyes. Because see, sight is a function of the eyes, but vision is a function of the heart. What's in your heart? It's been said that eyes that look are common, but eyes that see are rare. And without vision, sight doesn't have hope. Sight doesn't have hope. And so as a leader, you have to plant that vision. You have to share that perspective that's in your heart. So I want to challenge you to think about it from that standpoint. Sight is that ability to see things as they are. Vision is the capacity to see things as they could be. So you're not saying how are we going to do it. It's saying, hey, here's where we're going, here's where we are growing. And so I challenge you to think about it from that standpoint. And when you begin to look at that, you can start to live this king-size dream. So we talked about what purpose, we talked about the people, the power of the planning, and then that fresh perspective and that vision that you must have as a dynamic leader. And so in order to live that king-size dream, you must have that. And so I want to leave you with this here. Just one of the things that I always challenge organizations, that when I speak to organizations and share, whether virtually or in person, I challenge you to be better. Don't be your best, be better. Be a friend. But in order to be a friend, you must be a friend. In order to have a friend, you must be a friend. And so think about that. Give more. Always give more than expected. Always give more than you feel you can. And so as you think about it, life is always going to give us less than we give. So the more you give, the more it's going to come back. And then serve others. I challenge you as you move forward, always continue to serve others. Ask yourself, how can you serve others? And then my personal mantra, when I'm down and out and trying to push through, I always say, Howard, do what you know and not what you feel. There are times when you don't feel like doing, but you were called to serve. And when you implement those 4 P's and remember that I was called to serve, guess what? Guess what? You will live a king-size dream. So with that, I'm going to park it right there, Caitlin. And